Hi, my name's Alex, and I'm a former GATE kid who's been doing a deep dive on the GATE program. In my last video, I was talking about Hollywood and secret societies. And then if you've been following my channel and you're expecting another video, you may have noticed that I went dark for a couple of days. And there's a reason behind that. And I wanted to get on here and talk about that today, just in case there's been anybody else who's ever had the feeling that they were being watched or stalked or targeted, gang stalked, any and all of the above, because I know the fear of that feeling, and I wanted to share some things, some realizations that I came to in the last couple of days while taking a break from social media, and some things that I thought about that have helped me shift my own narrative around the situation. Because I know from experience that a lot of people who have been specifically in the GATE program or the Gifted and Talented Education program feel like they're being watched or targeted or stalked or kept track of in some way. Now, some of us have been recruited by, some of us have been recruited by military, some of us have been recruited by Hollywood, some have been recruited by MENSA. Either way, wherever or whoever you've been recruited by, there's a reason, because your energy is valuable and important in this world. So it's important to learn how to set energetic boundaries and to not allow ourselves to succumb to fear, because when we do succumb to fear over situations like that, that is what makes us a vibrational match and even more of a target for organizations who are targeting us with nefarious agendas. So my last video was about secret societies and Hollywood and how I was approached by what I assumed to be a secret society in my local comedy scene. And I was getting ready to make another video the day after to go a little deeper into my experience, and I recorded the video and was getting ready to post it, and then I just felt my body just completely shut down, and I felt paranoia start to take over. I started second guessing myself and questioning whether or not I should post it. I was like, well, should I edit it? Should I take out certain parts of it? I don't know, but I was freaked out. And then I sat in analysis paralysis all day without posting the video. And I didn't want to post a video. I don't want to get in the habit of posting videos when it's not in alignment with what I feel like I want to share. And I think that's a habit that a lot of content creators fall in. We feel like we're constantly supposed to be creating and spewing out content, but that's not always in our best interest. So not only was my 3-day hiatus a lesson in how to reset my own nervous system and not fall victim to fear, but I also did a lot of self-reflection during this time about that gang stalking experience specifically, and I came to some more internal conclusions and things that may have been making me a vibrational match and a target to these organizations or these groups in the first place. Because I've talked about in many of my videos about the law of attraction and how I feel like the law of attraction is very real. I discovered the book The Secret back in 2017. I saw the movie. I went down this whole rabbit hole of learning about the law of attraction, listening to Abraham Hicks and Bashar and all of the law of attraction teachers, not to mention all of the other coaches who you may not know, like your, typical influencer coach who teaches law of attraction and scripting exercises and stuff like that. I've watched them all. I've tried many of their exercises, and I've actually had a lot of success in manifesting a life that I was really excited about. So what's interesting is back in 2023, I was just getting out of a relationship, and I had felt like I'd sacrificed a lot of myself, especially my creative energy, because that person wasn't very comfortable with me being my comedy alter ego. So after that breakup, I was in a position where I was like, oh, hold on, we got loud noises from outside. Wait for it to pass 1 second. Okay. Weird timing, right? So back in 2023, I got out of this relationship, and I was in a place where I was doing a lot of healing, and I was ready to pursue comedy. So part of my purpose for wanting to pursue comedy was to develop more of a platform, because I have always, from the time I was younger, wanted to do plays and movies and comedy and just fun with acting and playing different characters. But I'm also very passionate about healing and astrology and human design and my remote viewing tarot readings, which I do to help people find clarity in whatever they're going through in life. And I believe that the more people that I can share with, hopefully the more people I can help to empower them and help them break free from these limiting systems on the planet that are keeping a lot of people disempowered. And I'm doing that because I'm a person who was very disempowered for a long time in my life, for most of my 20s and teens, because I feel like I was the victim of a lot of programming that's going on, not only in the GATE program, but with the masses. And I had to do a lot of internal work to overcome that internal programming and discover a lot of these tools along the way that helped me come into touch with who I am as a person, my authentic self. What is my truth? What am I here to express? What is my purpose in this lifetime? And I think that's something that a lot of people are lacking these days. But anyways, I wanted to pursue comedy and had dreams of fame in Hollywood because I wanted a bigger platform to help more people. And part of one of the things that I was manifesting low key or hoping to manifest was a trip to Hollywood, just to prove to myself, like, wow, I'm, manifesting all these other things. Maybe I'm powerful enough to manifest fame. And be careful what you wish for, because one of the things that I manifested was all of the things that come with fame, especially if you're watching the kind of fame stuff that I'm watching in Hollywood right now, which has a lot to do with conservatorships and secret societies doing rituals, and then industry puppets who are not allowed to speak their truth or be who they are because they're a $1 million brand who are actually being controlled by corporations and people behind the scenes. So, the Katy Perry, the Sabrina Carpenter, the Britney Spears, they are a brand. They are an image that a group of people have cleverly crafted, and in their music there is subliminal messaging that's being directed at the masses to fit a perfect or a specific narrative, right? So it's interesting to explore why we have these dreams of fame in the first place. Are the dreams of fame that a lot of people have, especially performers and creators, are they because it's a lack of abundance mindset where we think that if we get famous that we'll automatically get rich and we won't have to be in this survival mode anymore? Do we want to be famous because we are the victim of mass programming done in our childhood and we don't feel like we love ourselves? So we're looking for the masses to build us up and appreciate us and tell us that we're worth something. So we need their validation. I don't know. Could it be a little bit of both, perhaps? Definitely. But I've been thinking, as I've been going off my own personal grid the last couple of days and taking a break from posting, what were the reasons that led me to connect with these types of people in the first place and to manifest this kind of situation in my life? So one of the things that I came to internally was that, well, maybe this belief or this desire to be famous comes from a couple different places. And I think the first one is a big one, the abundance, especially in this economy. So you have a lot of people right now who are saying there's a recession, the economy is so bad. Not only are they saying it, but they're seeing it reflected back to them, and they're seeing truth that the economy is bad. We're seeing gas prices, well, actually, I don't know if the gas prices are as bad as they were at one point, but they were going up. Maybe they're going down. Maybe they're going up again. Who knows? But groceries have gone up. Rent has gone way up. Just utilities continuously go up. Insurance seems to go up. Just, it seems like everything, like even my jewelry supplies that I used to buy years ago have doubled to tripled in cost, which is why I'm not focused on making a lot of jewelry anymore, because I can't compete with Shein and Temu and these places that are selling jewelry for so cheap, and they're literally exploiting all these workers. How are you, going to be a creative artist? Which brings me to my next point. Is that just an idea, a lack idea that I have? Is that why my jewelry is not doing well? Because it's a story that I tell myself. And I think that's very important to share with people, because I think that we as humans have a lot more power than we realize we have over the kind of reality that we create. And I think that the second you start telling one story is the second that you're putting something out there in the universe with your words that's going to be reflected to you in the mirror that is the universe, and it's going to be reflected back to you in many different ways. And then when you see that reflection back, you're going to say, see, I was right, so my story is true. It's affirming my story. So that is a big part of the reason why I think I felt like I needed to go to Hollywood to be rich, because I was like, well, how, I'm not doing great as an artist and there's a recession, but if you're famous or if you have a bigger platform, like you're going to draw more people. So therefore you're going to get more business, or you're going to get more, brands deals or whatever kind of deals that you get, where maybe you would actually be able to afford the lifestyle you want, and maybe you'd be able to fund your animal sanctuary, which is what I'm trying to do. So that was one reason why I think I was seeking fame a couple of years ago. And then another big reason I think was because of childhood programming. And I think that it happens to a lot of us where we just, for whatever reason, feel like we need validation from other people. Plus social media kind of hardwires us that way. If you're posting and you're getting like 0 likes and nobody looking at it, you start to feel like bad about yourself, or I did anyway. And I'm trying to break myself of that habit, which is ironic because the second I kind of stopped caring and I started to create content that was based on what I wanted to share and what felt right to me, rather than trying to do all these stupid little algorithm games and these trending things on TikTok and Instagram, I kind of came to this point a couple months ago where I was like, why am I dancing around like an idiot trying to follow all these trends? It's not working. And the reason why it's not working goes back to the law of attraction, and the stories that we tell ourselves. So if I'm telling myself that the economy is bad and people don't care about homemade jewelry or handmade jewelry, and I can't compete with Temu and Shein and all these things, then the universe is just going to reflect that back to me. And if I'm being honest with myself, I wasn't being the truest, most authentic version of myself when I'm just sharing things that are copying trends that other people are doing. Because that's basically what social media is. We're copying other trends. Maybe if we're not directly copying it, we're putting our spin on it. We're copying formulas for success through other influencers and through people who are on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube saying, oh, this is how my channel grew. This is how my channel grew. And then we're trying those things, and then sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So this might be a good time to share one of the stories that I was going to share in the video that I filmed but didn't post the other day. It was about the growth of this channel right here. And how right before I had a semi-viral video, I have one video right now that has 11K views, which when you come from 29 views or a humble 13 views, 11K is a lot. And that's all of a sudden a lot of people who are actually looking on your channel, to go from less than 100 views a month, if that, maybe even less than that, maybe 50 views a month, and then all of a sudden to have 30K people looking at your stuff. That may not seem like a lot to some of these influencers who have millions or hundreds of thousands, but it certainly is a lot in my mind, and it is starting to give me some validation that maybe some of these things that I'm talking about and these experiences that I'm having are actually worth speaking about. And that's interesting because it also showed me the value of authenticity and being your unique self, Bret Michaels bandana and all, versus all of these cookie cutter influencers that are just trying to be like everybody else because we're trying to follow a formula that works for everybody else. So I think abundance is, or a lack mentality is maybe one of the reasons why, we want fame or we want validation. And then childhood programming being another one. And then what is the other realization that I came to? This other realization that I had was one, that's, kind of difficult to share because it's humbling. But I think maybe at the time when I was seeking fame or when I was seeking more work in Hollywood, because I thought that that was the only route to success and that would be the only way that I'd ever be able to buy land for my animal sanctuary, is if I was seen by more people. I thought I needed, I'm getting sidetracked, but that's the reason why I wanted to pursue fame in Hollywood, right? And I had this realization the other day that another reason that I might have manifested this experience, this negative experience of Hollywood and gangstalking and all that, is because what if my life was so boring that this was me or my brain trying to manifest a way for me to feel more valued or more interesting? Like it was a way for my ego to be like, oh, you're important. That's why these people are gang stalking you and stalking. And I'm not saying that's the reason I was targeted to begin with or why that happened, but maybe it was as simple as something happened that was a little bit woo-woo or right, or a little bit different. And because another big thing I forgot to mention earlier was a conspiracy mindset, right? Because there's a lot of people who are obsessed with conspiracies under the guise that we are bringing things to light and trying to bring healing to the world. But in reality, if all you're consuming on social media is conspiracy content where it's like, they're poisoning our food, they're poisoning our air, our water is poisoned, the clothing is poisoned, vinyl flooring is poisoned, you can't get away from poisoning. Your face products, your beauty products, it all has poison. And then when you put it in plastic, you've got microplastics. And then when you put it, I'm sorry, all these cars. And then when you're putting it in aluminum foil, you're getting the heavy metals in your body. And then the heavy metals are making you channel aliens and picking up stuff from the 5G cell phone towers. Okay, I could go on, but that's literally what my feed looked like. And I didn't realize how anxious it was making me. So back to the law of attraction. If I have that much anxiety because of stuff that I'm consuming, but I think I'm consuming it because I'm trying to be helpful and I'm trying to like see something that not a lot of other people have seen, right? I'm trying to bring awareness to something and say, hey, it's wrong that they're doing this and they're doing that. It feels like a losing battle, especially when everything on your feed is all about like negativity. And at some point, I think you just come to this point, at least I did, came to a point within myself where I was like, I can't fight this anymore. Like, I just have to focus on living my life to the fullest and appreciating what I have rather than constantly being on the lookout for like the next thing that's going to cause cancer and the next thing I need to warn people about. And not to mention that it makes me internally angry that there's corporations that can get away with this stuff. And not to mention that it makes me angry that people, even me, I've been a victim of this too, and, you know, guilty of this too, that we're just such desperate consumers, and we're so, you know, in such a place where we're in such survival mode that we are supporting this kind of these atrocities, these companies that are knowingly putting poisons and stuff in our food supply, and, you know, plastics, microplastics, and these poor animals that are eating like complete trash, and then they're not telling us like, oh, all that pork you're consuming is like literally gonna have to do a lot of detoxing because all they eat are expired Hostess things and, you know, literal trash. And if we are what we eat, then that's what we're becoming. And then, you know, we can get into parasites and all that, and, you know, the fear and paranoia that all that stuff creates when we're constantly consuming this stuff. So I'm not saying that stuff is not, that stuff doesn't exist. But what I am coming to realize is that when you are only focused on that and you're in that fear zone, you become a vibrational match to that stuff. So whether we're talking about health issues that manifest as a result of all these companies that are poisoning us, or we're talking about gang stalking or the government watching you because you're reading so much about different conspiracies and different government programs that you start to absorb so much content that you start to think that you're a target, which is, I think, what was happening to me, because months prior to running into these secret societies, I was consuming so much information about it. And I had, you know, a good friend that would talk to me on the phone for like 4 hours a night and just like share all of his crazy conspiracy theories with me. Not to mention that when I was hanging out with this group of people who were, you know, casually token on the MJ and drinking, I became one of these people who is brainwashed easily, because when you are high every single day, your mind is altered every single day, you're a blank slate and you can be easily programmed with whatever ideas. So if I'm a blank slate and I'm just allowing myself to be programmed because I'm not doing, you know, using these products with intention, which is how they're supposed to be used on occasion, not occasion every single day or multiple times a day to cure anxiety. I understand that some people think that it's curing their anxiety, and maybe it is, and maybe it's a step up from, you know, the other things that you could be doing. And I'm not trying to hate on that, but what I realized and what I had to like tough love myself on is like, you're literally doing something that is designed to keep you in a lower vibrational state of consciousness. Okay. So whether you can admit that to yourself or not, like I wasn't ready to quit for like 3 years, and I kept doing it. And then also wondering like, why is my abundance capped? And why am I getting a lot of anxiety at night still, even though I'm doing this product every single day that's supposed to help with my anxiety? Seriously, why do we still have anxiety that we need to treat every day and we're doing the product every day that's supposed to be treating it? Doesn't make sense. Make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. Okay, that's at least what I've come to. But each journey is their own, so to thine own self be true. But I'm just saying, like, I needed people to like tough love me and say, hey, it's an addiction. So when you have an addiction like that, as seemingly innocent or acceptable by society as it could be, you're putting yourself in positions to be easily manipulated by other people and their programming, like, not whether that's somebody individually trying to program you or if that is social media that you're consuming on a daily basis. So conspiracy content, or I would say, okay, sexy content, we'll put it that way, like all these men who have corn addictions, because they're being bombarded with all this stuff that they keep clicking on, and that's what their algorithm is all about. And then, that's a whole other topic of a conversation. But basically, when we have an addiction too, the other thing is that our body wants to stay in homeostasis. So rather than being honest with ourselves and our brain saying, hey, your addiction is making you feel a certain way, it's making you feel paranoid, we're going to start projecting that paranoia on outside things. So in order to keep my habit, which is making my body happy because my body wants to be in homeostasis, I might start thinking all of a sudden, it's not the MJ that's making me paranoid. It's these outside forces that are stalking me. It's these outside forces that are sending me magic. And when I start to tell myself that story, because of the law of attraction, it's going to start feeding that information out into the universe, and the universe is going to start reflecting that back to me. So yes, what am I saying? I'm saying my gangstalking, bullying, harassment situation may have been self-caused. And that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people. I bet you there's not a lot of people willing to admit that, especially on the internet. But I just want to show you the power of your thoughts and how important it is, because you don't know something until you know. So it's not your fault if you're ignorant or you don't know something. But if somebody teaches you something and now you know, and now you have this epiphany and this understanding, it is your responsibility to do something about it, rather than keep blaming outside forces for why your life is a certain way. So I quit all that stuff months ago, and I'm coming up on close to 5 months sober, and I have not had bad experiences since then, but or in the way that they were 9 months ago, right? But that being said, now that I have a bigger platform and I'm talking about this kind of stuff, every so often I see somebody trying to join my private Facebook group who has things that are patterns that I recognize, or locations that I recognize, or a lack of a profile picture, or lack of, information available, so I can't get a feel for their energy. And I want to be accessible to everyone with my gate group, but I don't personally, because of my own trauma, I don't feel comfortable speaking openly and vulnerably in that group, which is supposed to be a private, sacred, safe space with a small number of people to talk about real stuff, versus YouTube platform where everyone has access to you. I can't block people from my channel. Whoever watches is gonna watch, and that's why I don't share everything on here. I'm as open as I can be within reason. But for private Facebook groups and stuff like that, like, I don't feel comfortable, and I'm sure a lot of people in the group also don't feel comfortable with people who are not being equally as vulnerable, because vulnerability and sharing and healing is a two-way street. So if I'm, giving myself and I'm being my true authentic self, I'm showing you who I am, what I'm about, pictures of my life, personal information and all that stuff, then I want I can't say that word, okay? I want it to be reciprocated. That's what I'm trying to say. So I'm sorry if you're one of the people who doesn't get approved for that, because I also understand privacy reasons, but we have to keep, I want to keep the integrity of the group and the purpose of the group protected in that way. So all of that to say, while most of the bad experiences that I had when I felt like I was being gang stalked have disappeared for the most part, other than the occasional profile, but that is because I'm more intentional about what comes in to my space and the stories that I tell. I'm very intentional about the people I keep around me, because back when I was, reliant on certain substances, I didn't have strong boundaries about who I allowed into my energy field and who I allowed in my personal space. And there's a lot of people who are also under the influence of these things, and they're also very easily programmed. So they can carry what the spiritual community might call a monitoring spirit, where they're kind of a victim of their own demons. And because they're not enlightened or aware of their habits and what they're cultivating in their own lives and what they're creating in their own lives, when they come into your space, they're bringing all of those demons with them. So you're, through lowering your standards and your boundaries and keeping yourself in a state that is a little bit numbed out, like, well, everything's cool. Like, I could just sit here and chill. Like, with my friends, everything's cool. That's how I was when I was just, going to the dispensary every day, like, right? That whole attitude of like 420, like, we're all chill, man. It's all cool here. But like, when you do that, you're just like opening yourself up to like whoever and whatever. And that can be very dangerous, especially if you're a vulnerable individual. That is what I learned from that. So rather than, thinking that it was from the GATE program, like it very well could have been from the GATE program, like that set the ball rolling. And it could have very well been I was just at the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's why I attracted certain people. It could have been very well that I live in a city that's not far from Hollywood, and a lot of people from Hollywood moved to the state that I live in. So it could have been that. And I'm not saying that it's not those things, but I'm saying that the reason I was a vibrational match and why it spiraled out of control at some point for me, to the point where I was in hiding for 2 years, and I had all these car problems and money problems at the same time, is because I was a vibrational match to that, because of what I was putting in my body, my lack of personal boundaries, because what I was putting in my body was making me kind of like in this like la-di-da, everything is cool, so like cool, you can enter, I don't care, you're cool, man. And then when I let them in, they were also in that space. So we're letting in, symbolism, like certain imagery has portals that have intentions of bringing in demonic forces. Look at the show AstroWorld with what's his face, the conspiracy about AstroWorld, and the show that Travis Scott put on. I just saw a documentary about it the other day where they were showing all the symbolism, how his mouth being open was like a famous painting, and it was literally about like people entering the portal of hell, and then people actually died. So like, and look at the people who attended a concert like that. They were most likely under the influence of some kind of substance, and then they didn't know that they were partaking in this ritual that all these higher up people, in theory, would have known about, right? And they're just walking into this environment, and I've heard some people share in their video that they literally felt like their souls were being sucked out of their body. So this is the danger of, that's why they call WEED the gateway drug, the gateway tapes, the GATE program. Do you see a connection here? I do. I don't know. There could be a connection, or maybe there's not. But, the fact that they call it a gateway drug, and then it's being pushed on everybody, like they want everybody to do it, and how it, cures anxiety and stuff. Like, yeah, it cures anxiety. It, like, makes you numb to life, and you're just kind of like, whatever. And you think you're happier because you have the thing, but you have no idea, unless you're very, very intentional about your practice. You really don't have any idea what you're opening yourself up to, and then the consequences of those actions, who you might attract, what you might attract, and then what you might do under the substance. I was finding myself, acting in ways that I would never have acted in my sober mind. And I, not trying to demonize weed here, but also just trying to be honest, because if you're a person that does it every day and your life isn't exactly where you want it, let's just say you're not making the money you want, you don't have the relationship you want, you don't live in your ideal location, you feel far from your dreams, to not look at that very one thing that you're doing on a daily basis, and then to hear other accounts of stories like where people are sharing their experience and like, hey, my life got so much better and like everything changed. Like, you've got hundreds, if not thousands of people who are sober, who are literally sharing their testimony every day. Like, when they get off of DRUGS and they get sober, they literally become different people and their lives change. Or like people who find God or Jesus or religion or whatever that looks like for them, they find something outside of themselves, a greater purpose, and everything changes. So I think, ignorance is bliss, right? But the reason why I wanted to share about this stuff is because it's something that I couldn't see at the time. That I was deep in the throes of it, in the thick of it, and just all the consequences that came from being a daily consumer of that stuff. And then it ties back into Hollywood and celebrities and stuff pushing this stuff in their music, in movies and songs. And I remember during that time when I was recruited by these organizations back in 2023, I was handed a handful of scripts, and guess what? All the scripts had to do with being murdered, going into like a restaurant and like having a shootout, or it had to do with drugs and alcohol and underage kids. And I said no to all three of them because I don't want to act out that stuff. I don't want to have any role in acting like those things are cool and normal or glamorizing them in any way. And I believe that if you're a powerful manifestor like I am, I think I've shared in other videos how I started doing my podcast. You can't find the original Starletta show because those episodes, I own them now. I own the intellectual rights to them finally after 2 years, but I don't have them posted right now for a lot of reasons. But the first episodes that when I was filming that show with this group of people, it was a parody skit about exposing the Illuminati. So I'm throwing myself in my acting, and I play the role. I am the role when I do act. So could that have been another reason why I started to manifest in the year after, like all these seedy people coming to my life? What started out as fun and games and just like a show to expose the elite that we don't even know, they can't be real, right? And then now all of a sudden, art is imitating life. And then you look at cases like Heath Ledger playing the Joker in The Dark Knight, and then he's gone, and he's not the only actor that got into a dark role and then, passed away from it. So there's power to our thoughts. There's power in our actions. There's a lot of power in all this stuff. And I think there's a connection here. So not only in like Hollywood and like, the Illuminati formula for undetectable mind control slave. I share that article a lot because it talks about all the substances that they used in MK Ultra programming to put people under the influence, and they talk about how which influences their mind and their subconscious mind. And then not only that, but also in the shows that we're growing up watching, like The Little Mermaid and The Wizard of Oz and all of these other shows that are mentioned in that article, by supposed whistleblowers. Okay, I don't know. I'm just repeating an article that was already published that resonated with me and that made things make sense to me and started to help me connect the dots. So if I'm just acting like all these other people who are just mindlessly consuming things without thought or intention, then I'm becoming part of this programming. So part of the realities that we're collectively creating, so this potential civil war and nuclear war potentially, and all these other things, like, I hate to say it, but like this gross society where like sacred unions and love and like true love and sacred union is just feels like a thing of the past a lot of the time, because you're watching all these people exploit themselves on the different adult websites and then calling it empowerment. And I don't mean to like judge anybody, because like we've all been there before maybe, but I'm just saying that if we're really looking at what's going on here, there's a lot of negative intentions behind all of this programming and all of these things that seem normalized. But when you look at the reasons why they want you to have intimacy with multiple partners, they want you to have intimacy with multiple partners because all of those partners are pulling from your energy field, your sacral center, your life force energy center, and your emotional solar plexus, because when you combine energy fields with somebody, you take on their demons and they take on yours. So are you a person who's having intercourse with multiple people? And are you, I've been in these periods too, because I grew up in the generation of free love, right? Where, it was just normalized in high school, like for people to just like hook up, or working in the restaurant industry to just like hook up or casually date people, and Tinder, swipe left, swipe right. Like, I've grown up in this generation of people having multiple partners. And that's another thing I realized, like, I don't want to share my energy with multiple partners, because when I was just casually not knowing any better, because I didn't know, my life was so much more difficult. I didn't have internal peace. I was cut off from my abundance. I didn't have purpose in my life, and I didn't know why. It was so easy to just blame the other people or the problems that were coming from them, or to not even be able to draw a correlation at all. So, everything has its higher polarities, its lower polarities. Like, there's good, there's bad, there's shadows, and there's light. So when we do come across situations like this in life where, maybe you slip and you go back on your sobriety, or maybe you break your celibacy and you casually date somebody that you shouldn't, or whatever, or you cheat on your wife or whatever. You do things that are out of character. I like to think that there's always something positive that we can learn from it. So it's sometimes we need the shadow to integrate the light and find our way back to source and make us more whole and complete. Also, the fact that spirituality is like a spiral that expands upwards, right? So we're always coming back around to old lessons and themes, but hopefully every time we come back around, we come around with a higher perspective and we're smarter than we were in past cycles. So all of this stuff at the end of the day serves a purpose. And even the conspiracy stuff, as scary as it can be, and as much fear that it can leave you in, if you take it in doses and recognize, okay, I gotta set limits for myself. I know about this, okay? I know this theory's there. So like, what is spirit? What is the universe trying to show me about this? Okay, maybe I'm being shown all this bad stuff in Hollywood because maybe I'm supposed to be a person who's gonna use my light or my ability to create music, and I'm putting out the 432 hertz vibrational high vibe music, and I'm seeing what is not working. I'm seeing what's negative. I'm seeing what's harming people, and I'm consciously deciding to be on this side, to be an uplifter rather than somebody who's contributing to the problem that's causing a lot of depression and unaliving and just so many negative things. So at the end of the day, the contrast is here to serve the purpose of helping us decide who we want to be, what we want to be, and it gives us something to create with. Because if we just lived in this whole love and light universe, that's why I'm not drawn to love and light spirituality, because it doesn't integrate the shadow at all. And you need both in order to be a masterful creator and be in control of your own energy field. Because at the end of the day, I think that's what's most important to me, is freedom. And I would like to think that that's probably what is most important to other people too, is like understanding that you have freedom. Most people think that they're free, but they don't realize how enslaved they are. And I think most people, if you really saw the reality of like what is actually happening and all the ways that we're being programmed and, forced to be on a certain life track, when in reality, maybe you would have chosen something different for yourself had you not been exposed to this childhood programming or this childhood situation or this, experience in your adulthood, or all the things that you saw in movies. Maybe you would have made a different choice. So that is my goal. It's like, I want to show people that there are different choices that you can make, and you can be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem. But even if you are part of the problem, know that in some weird way, that's kind of helping other people step into the solution. So it all serves its purpose. It's all how you look at it. And the moral of the story here is that it's just important not to fall victim to fear. Or we're all going to fall victim to fear at some point or another, but not to stay there. So that is my biggest lesson that I learned, not to stay there, and then to treat my body like the temple that it is. Like, watch what I'm consuming on social media, watch what I'm consuming internally, substance wise, food wise, sunlight wise, natural water sources, all of that stuff. Like, to be so intentional about it, not to mention the people I'm sharing my physical energy with, because your aura expands 12 feet. So who you're sharing walls with, who you're sharing lunches with, who you're sharing a classroom with or a workspace with, like, you are in a way becoming those people because you're absorbing them, because just by being in the vicinity of them. So it's just important to wake up to all this stuff. And if you ever need help in this department, I'm very passionate about human design, because that helps us look at where we're sensitive and where we take in energy. And astrology can help us understand the cycles in our life. Sorry about all these cars, but astrology can help us understand the cycles in our life and what we're learning through these cycles as well. Because, side note, when I was going through all the Gangstalking stuff, there's a specific reason in my cycle that I was coming across all that stuff too. So whether I want to look at it as I was under the influence too much, I was living in fear too much, and I attracted it because of the law of attraction, I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, I was, it was ready to happen in my astrology chart, I was open in these areas in human design. It's all relevant. It's all part of the truth, right? There can be different truths at the same time. So it all comes down to, what is the truth you want to tell yourself? So hope you got something from this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.